Hello, welcome to Native Yoga Center. My name is Todd McLaughlin. How to open the psoas. Yoga for loosening the hip flexors with emphasis on the psoas. So the psoas muscle is also known as the iliopsoas because it is comprised of one muscle that is called the iliacus. So here is a visual of the iliacus muscle, which you can see that it has an origin here on the top of the pelvis, and it comes down and attaches onto the femur. The other main part of the iliacus or iliopsoas muscle is what is called the psoas major. And here you can see the psoas major attaches on the transverse processes of the lumbar vertebra and also comes down and attaches down onto the femur. And there's a third muscle that I'm not going to address today because it has a few interesting characteristics, but it is called the psoas minor. What makes the psoas minor unique is that it actually attaches down to the pubic ramus of the pelvis. So it actually has an opposite action to the psoas major. However, I don't want to make things confusing. So what we're going to do is primarily focus today on loosening and opening up psoas major and the iliacus muscle. All right, so to get started, what I'm going to have you do is set up your yoga mat. And I have two blocks here ready to go, but these are going to be optional because the first pose that we're going to focus on is a lunge. And so I'm bringing my left foot forward, my right leg, this is where the psoas muscle traverses. So remember, we had that one section that attaches onto the front of the iliac crest on the ilium. And then we have that other section that attaches onto the transverse processes on the side of the lumbar spine. And both the psoas major and the iliacus come down and attach onto the femur. When the psoas muscle contracts, it will cause hip flexion. So right now my right leg psoas is contracting, causing hip flexion. And it also, when it contracts, will create a little bit of flexion and external rotation where the knee will drop out and open. So what we want to do to stretch this muscle, and part of the reason why we like to keep the psoas open is the relationship that it plays with the lower back. But here I have my left foot forward, flex forward into the bend of your left knee and allow your right knee to stay down on the ground and for your hips to travel forward and down so that we are attempting to lengthen the distance from the front of the pelvis all the way down to the kneecap or the knee. So by dropping the hip down, we are actively engaging stretching into the psoas major and the iliacus muscle. And as you lunge forward, you ideally will feel some pressure stretching here. Hopefully your knee doesn't hurt. You can always put some cushion under the knee. And we have what is called a classic lunge or a lunge position that we know in a pose called Anjanasana and or monkey pose. And I'm just breaking down the monkey pose to make it quite simple today. Notice I have my hands on blocks. You might not need blocks. You can probably, or maybe you're able to touch the floor. But if you try to create a lunge position, you have a hard time stabilizing your balance, then definitely go ahead and put a little prop under your hands, and that way you can access stretching into that front of the right thigh. We're going to work both sides evenly, so I'm just switching so that you can observe the leg closest to you, which right now is my left leg, but the right leg is forward, and we lunge forward into the bend of the right knee, directly accessing the psoas in the front of the left thigh. Because the psoas muscle is a hip flexor, to stretch the muscle, we need to do hip extension. And hip extension, one leg at a time, is a very effective way to work in on this muscle with direct pressure. So this is the first one I'll have you start off with. And we create the lunge. We're holding both sides for equal amount of time. Remember, whenever you're practicing, put a substantial, let's put enough pressure that you feel something is happening, but not so much pressure that you are in pain. So you might have to adjust and be up in this realm here, where this angle of movement is more than enough for you already. So just take it to the point where if you're working on it every day, you might find you'll get more range of motion. Of course you will if you keep working on it. You're going to get a little more range of motion here in the pelvis and with the stretch of the psoas. All right, the next one that I'm going to have you try is a classic known as the prep for pigeon, or what's called one-leg king pigeon pose. Ekapada Raja Kapotasana has a fancy name, but is another good psoas stretch. The way that we'll start this one is I have my right knee forward. I'm going to rotate a little external rotation and then stretch my left leg back. So right now we're predominantly focusing on the left side psoas muscle by attempting to bring the front of the left hip forward and down. Now, I'm aware from watching lots of students that not everybody has that sort of range of motion, and we have to be alert or attentive to the front knee. So I'm going to turn this way, so I'm still working the same leg. My left leg is back, my right leg is forward. But what you might need to do is start a little higher like this. Notice that my left knee right now is near my right foot. The way that we go deeper on this is you start stretching or ratcheting the left leg, the straight leg behind you, back further and further. This pose is also really good for opening up the piriformis and the deep six lateral rotator muscles over on the right hip, but we can use this one as a great way to open up the psoas. If you need to use a prop like a block under your hip, what you can do is lift up your hips and slide a prop right underneath, and you can lean the pressure down onto the prop. And that can take a little bit of the intensity out of the position. However, what I want to point out, I'm going to turn so I face forward towards you, is that one of the ways that we'll really actively get in on the psoas is by attempting to bring the body over so that your leg is straight behind you and you're working right down the relative front center. Now, if we do roll over here, this does a good job of getting right here in on the psoas muscle, which feels a little bit medial to the front line of the quad. So, you can work and change your angle, and we're going to definitely work both sides. So now bring your left leg forward and your right leg back and practice leveraging the body weight so that you can feel the pressure in the front hip, the left hip, but also with your right leg back, we're going to be able to access stretching the psoas. Now, another point, stay where you are, that I want to point out though, or demonstrate, is that if I lean my body forward, that causes my pelvis to do an anterior tilt. And so that actually will shorten or not stretch the psoas. So one way that we can deepen the psoas stretch in this posture is starting to implement in the direction of where we head when we go to the one-leg king pigeon. And so here, because I try to be careful personally with my low back when I do back bending, I'm going to focus on drawing the belly in and keeping the lumbar relatively not bending. You might not have to worry about this because your low back might be really healthy. But I'm going to try to do very minimal back bending in the low body and put pressure forward so that the hip is going down. So this is another way that you can really deepen the psoas stretch by trying to pull the spine into the back bend angle. This can definitely help. All right, another way, or a way that I find is really helpful with the psoas, again, we're going to come into the lunge position. And I'm going to use blocks right now just to demonstrate for those of you that might need the blocks. But again, you do not need these. So if you don't need them, don't use them. So I'm going to bring my right foot forward and align my right foot with my right knee and my right hip and my left hip and my left knee and my left foot, so that now I'm just going to go back and forth, forward and back. So what it looks like from the side is creating a little bit of where we started, where we have this lunge effect where you just rock back and rock forward, and we'll do both legs where we rock back and we rock forward. But here what I'd like to demonstrate, because the psoas does travel a little bit like medial of the front middle line, that when we rock forward, if you can roll your hips a little bit side to side, so I'm leaning on the blocks, I'm keeping the lunge, and I'm just kind of working, searching for tight areas in the psoas. And you can create a slight like angle shift by rocking the hips over to one side and rocking the hips over to the other. When we rock out to where we're putting pressure on the lateral side of the leg, doesn't stretch it as much as if you roll, like in, I'll talk slow. I know I can get excited. Let me slow down. So right now my right leg is back, my left foot's on the floor. If you lean toward your left leg, that goes right in on the psoas. You can feel it. Let's try the other leg, and we're going to shift. I'm going to bring my right leg forward. My left leg is back. You lunge forward. My right foot is forward. So if your right foot is forward, lean a little bit, just a little, over towards your right foot and go straight in on that left psoas, iliacus, psoas major, and put some decent pressure and get it to loosen up. All right, well done. And there you have it. Work the lunge and the Ekapada Rajakapotasana to help to get the psoas major and iliacus muscle loosened up. Remember, I'm happy to answer questions and build tutorials that are specific for you. If you have any questions, comments, send them my way. You can comment on whatever platform you're watching on, and also you can send me an email, info@nativeyogacenter.com. All right, I hope this helps. Have a great day. Namaste.